They thought he was just observant, quiet, curious, harmless. But behind the stillness was something far more dangerous. He was watching, but not passively. He was memorizing every twitch of discomfort, every fake laugh, every time someone repeated the same excuse with different words. While others reacted, he calculated. Because Machiavelli understood something most never do, people don't act randomly. They follow invisible patterns. And if you learn how to read them, you no longer need to guess what they'll do next. You'll already know. A man walks into a room where alliances are shifting and lies are being passed like coins. He says little. He watches everything. This is not silence. This is surveillance. Machiavelli's first lesson in mastering people was to see them before they see you, not with your eyes, but with your pattern recognition. People imagine power as something loud, something decisive, but real power is often quiet and predictive. Because once you can anticipate someone's next move, you take away their unpredictability. And once you do that, you strip them of control without them even noticing. Most people live in cycles, not because they're foolish, but because their emotions are repetitive. Betrayal doesn't happen suddenly, it comes after 3 warnings you ignored. Weakness is not a single moment, it's a trail of small retreats. Machiavelli understood that chaos is an illusion. Everyone is running a script, and their behaviors are just recycled scenes from old fears, old habits, old patterns. You want to know what someone will do when pressured. Look at what they did the last time they were cornered. You want to know if they'll break under stress? Look at how they react when you delay a compliment or deny them a favor. The data is always there. People broadcast their next move in whispers, in silence, in the patterns they repeat when no one is watching. But it's not enough to simply observe. You must record it mentally, like a strategist preparing for war. Note the timing, the triggers, the body language, the moment their voice goes up half an octave, then rewind and watch it all again. Machiavelli believed the smartest men were not the loudest, but the ones already playing tomorrow's game. They didn't need to interrupt, they didn't need to argue, they just needed to wait. Because when the mask slipped, when the pressure rose, when the game broke down, everyone would revert to who they've always been. And the man who watched it happen once would already know how it would end. They think they're being unique, clever, unpredictable, but they're not. They're just unaware of how many times they've done the same thing, told the same story, fallen for the same trap. Machiavelli knew the truth. People are creatures of rhythm. You don't have to chase their intentions, you just have to find their loop. Everyone repeats themselves. The way they handle rejection, the excuses they give when they fail, the tone they use when they lie, it all circles back. And once you see the cycle, they're no longer a threat. They're a forecast, a machine you've already mapped. Most people believe they're acting out of free will. But Machiavelli saw how much of human behavior is unconscious repetition. Not just the big choices, but the little ones too. Who they admire, who they envy, what they run from, what they secretly crave. It's all a pattern, dressed up in different clothes. You don't need years to understand someone. You just need to watch them closely under stress, under praise, under silence. People reveal the same version of themselves in every setting. They just switch masks. The girl who avoids conflict with her boss avoids truth with her partner. The man who jokes too much during failure will always use humor to mask shame. These are not coincidences. They're rituals of the psyche. And if you're smart enough to trace them, you'll begin to see the repetition behind every decision. The same stories, the same emotions, the same escapes. Even when someone tries to change, they usually recreate the same cycle in a new disguise. They quit a toxic job, only to work for another tyrant. They end one one-sided relationship and enter another. They don't break the pattern, they relocate it. That's why most people's futures look eerily similar to their pasts. Not because life is unfair, but because their inner programming remains untouched. Machiavelli's genius was in spotting these loops early. While others wasted energy being surprised, he stayed calm because he had already seen this move. He knew how a flatterer would turn the moment he was denied access. He knew how a coward would betray just to feel safe again. He didn't need dramatic proof. He needed consistency. Repetition is louder than confession. If you want to predict someone's next decision, forget their words. Look at the version of themselves they've always returned to. That's who they are. Not in rare moments of clarity, but in the habits they repeat when no one's watching. Power comes when you stop being surprised, when you stop hoping they'll change, when you finally realize they've been showing you their next move all along. You just weren't paying attention. Until now. You don't need to be a mind reader to know someone's next move. You just need to study what they do when they think no one notices. Most people reveal their patterns not through grand actions, but through the smallest, most forgettable moments. The way they fidget when asked a hard question, the pause before they compliment someone, the shift in their tone when they talk about a person they secretly envy. These are the tells, the involuntary leaks of truth, and once you see them, you can never unsee them. Machiavelli understood that real power begins with attention, not loud attention, silent attention. While others are busy forming opinions, trying to win arguments or gain approval, the strategist watches. He watches for the moment someone adjusts their sleeve before lying, for the half-second delay before fake laughter, for the patterns in their apologies. Are they defensive? Are they overly dramatic? Do they turn guilt into a performance? These are not random behaviors. They are signals, and once decoded, they become a map to that person's soul. You want to know who will betray you. Watch how they treat people they don't need. You want to know who will crumble under pressure. Watch how they react to silence after they speak. Most people try to hide their vulnerabilities, but they end up repeating them instead. Because the body always speaks when the ego is trying to lie. People might control their words, but not their micro-reactions. Not the tension in their jaw when someone else wins. Not the way their eyes avoid yours after being called out. Not the casual insults they slip into conversations as jokes. Machiavelli didn't wait for someone to confess. He didn't need to. The confession was always happening in posture, in patterns, in repetition. All he had to do was record it, mentally, quietly, and use it later. Not for petty revenge, but for strategy. Because once you know a person's reflexes, you can steer them. Push a button, and they respond. Feed their insecurity, and they'll dance for your approval. Withhold praise, and they'll come crawling back to reclaim it. You no longer have to guess what they'll do next. They'll do exactly what they always do. That is the power of observation. Not just watching, but knowing what to watch for. The quiet tremble behind overconfidence. The self-sabotage disguised as selflessness. These are not flaws. These are formulas. And the moment you spot them, you own the future. Not because you're smarter, but because you saw what they didn't even know they were showing you. And once you can see someone clearly, predicting them becomes effortless. They think you're just intuitive, but really, you've been studying their blueprint from the start. Some people are hard to read until you turn up the heat. Machiavelli understood that true personality doesn't emerge during peace, it surfaces during pressure. If you want to know who someone really is, don't wait for them to show you. Force it out, not through cruelty, but through small, deliberate triggers that make them break their own mask. Because while people are good at controlling their behavior, they are terrible at hiding their instincts when discomfort enters the room. You want to see if someone is loyal? Deny them access. Delay your response. Watch how fast they switch. You want to know if someone is jealous? Compliment their rival. Observe the silence. These are not attacks, they're stress tests, and every powerful mind uses them. Because if you wait for life to expose someone, it might be too late. You'll be betrayed after the damage is done. But if you're the one applying the pressure, you stay in control. Machiavelli believed that rulers, leaders, even lovers, must provoke carefully, not out of cruelty, but clarity. Give someone an impossible choice. Make them wait. Ignore a compliment. Put them in a room where they are not the center, and then just watch. Watch what part of their nature refuses to stay hidden. Watch what part of their ego screams to be fed. The cracks will appear, and once they do, you will never fall for the mask again. The dangerous ones are those who seem adaptable, agreeable, harmless, because they've had years to perfect the role. But no one can act forever, under pressure. Push the right emotional button, and the performance collapses. You'll see the neediness under their charm, the rage under their politeness, the fear behind their ambition, and once you see it, you own it. People don't even realize what they've revealed. They think you're just being distant. They think you're just difficult. But you're not. You're measuring. You're collecting data. Every reaction is a line of code in their programming. The way they guilt trip, the way they justify, the way they panic when misunderstood. It's all useful. And when the time comes, when you need to predict their next move, you'll know exactly which direction they'll run because you've already seen where their instincts lead. Machiavelli didn't wait for truth. He created the conditions where truth became impossible to hide. That's the difference between a watcher and a strategist. One observes the surface, the other controls the pressure until the real face shows itself. And when it does, prediction becomes precision. You're no longer reacting, you're steering, quietly, invisibly, from a place of total control. Most people stop at behavior. They see the anger, the jealousy, the pride, but they never ask where it comes from. Machiavelli never made that mistake. He knew that if you want to predict someone's next move, you can't just study the surface. You must reverse engineer their psychology, tear it apart, break it down, trace every action back to the original wound. Because no one lashes out for no reason. No one controls others without first feeling powerless. The moment you stop taking their behavior personally and start seeing it as a reflection of their past, you gain something dangerous: foresight. Imagine someone who always overreacts to silence. They talk more, they explain themselves, they chase reassurance. On the surface, it looks like insecurity. But dig deeper, and you'll find the origin. Maybe they grew up being ignored. Maybe silence meant punishment. Now, every time it happens, they panic. They'll do anything to break the silence, even confess, even surrender. That is the moment you own them. Not through force, but understanding. Because people are ruled by the ghosts they haven't made peace with. And if you know which ghost haunts them, you can predict their every escape route. The man obsessed with status doesn't care about luxury. He cares about finally being respected after years of being invisible. The woman who mocks others isn't cruel by nature. She's defending herself from the version of her that was once humiliated. These aren't just flaws, they're coordinates. And once you locate the core wound, every behavior becomes a breadcrumb leading back to it. Machiavelli used this knowledge like a weapon. He didn't argue, he didn't threaten. He simply allowed people to expose themselves, then used their own psychology to lead them where he wanted. Predicting someone's next move is not about genius. It's about pattern plus pain. What pattern do they always repeat when that specific pain is triggered? That is the loop. That is the cage they live in. You don't need to control them. Their past already does. All you have to do is know it better than they do. Most people never question why they act the way they do, but you will. And because of that, you'll see the future before they even consider it. When they lash out, you'll know it's coming. When they retreat, you'll know why. When they lie, you'll know what truth they're protecting. They think they're being spontaneous. They're not. They're reenacting. Their history, their trauma, their pride, it's all a script. You just learned how to read it. And once you can read it, you can rewrite their story without them ever realizing it wasn't theirs to begin with. There is a power more subtle than control, more frightening than dominance. It is anticipation. The ability to know what someone will do before they do it, and to stay silent while they walk into the trap you never had to set, because their own nature laid it for them. Machiavelli understood this better than anyone. Prediction, to him, was not passive. It was a form of quiet warfare. To anticipate is to remove your enemy's ability to surprise you. It is to watch chaos unfold while you remain untouched, because you already calculated the collapse before the first crack appeared. Most people live in a state of reaction. They wait to be provoked, to be betrayed, to be disappointed, and then they respond. But the strategist never waits. He watches, he studies, and when the moment comes, he is not shocked. He is ready, because he already knew it would come. People don't notice anticipation. They don't fear it. But they should, because it's invisible until it's too late. While others guess, while others hope, you prepare. And when the pattern repeats, you do not flinch. You move, one step ahead, every time. That's why anticipation is more powerful than confrontation. You don't have to attack someone you've already outmaneuvered. You don't have to expose someone you've already outlasted. You just wait for their habit to become their downfall, and you step aside as it happens. Machiavelli didn't seek victory through noise. He let others reveal their flaws, and then made sure to be standing in the right place when those flaws exploded. Prediction gave him a terrifying calm, because once you know the loop, every action becomes predictable. The flatterer will turn bitter once denied. The coward will sell secrets when fear returns. The arrogant will self-destruct once their praise dries up. And when they do, the one who anticipated it all will appear not just wise, but invincible. Anticipation creates the illusion of supernatural control. People will call you intuitive, lucky, gifted, but you're none of those things. You're simply disciplined enough to watch the same behavior long enough to know it inside out. You're silent while they reveal their code. And when the code runs, you know the outcome line by line. There's no need to rush, no need to panic. While they plan their next move, you've already seen 3 moves ahead. That's what separates the powerful from the powerless. Not muscle, not rage, not speed, but the ability to stand still, eyes open, mind years ahead of the game, while everyone else is still playing the last round. Machiavelli's greatest weapon was not force, it was foresight. And once you learn to anticipate, you'll never lose again. The most dangerous move is not predicting someone, it's letting others think they have. Machiavelli understood that control doesn't come only from knowing what people will do. It comes from shaping what they believe others will do. And in doing so, you blur the line between truth and illusion. If you want to lead a group, you don't have to be loud. You just have to guide perception. Point to the fool and say, he's always emotional. Whisper that the quiet man is hiding something. Let the crowd believe they've figured someone out. And while they waste their energy reacting to the image you've planted, you move behind the scenes, adjusting your predictions in silence. This is how you dominate without lifting a finger. Most people love to categorize. They feel safer once they can label others. He's a hothead, she's ambitious. They're harmless. But these labels become prisons, and the moment someone accepts the label you handed them, they start living it out, like a role in a play. That's when you begin shaping outcomes from the shadows. You want someone to be feared? Make them predictable. Reveal their pattern, exaggerate it, and let others react to it over and over. You want someone underestimated? Hide their sharpness behind a smile. Let them fumble once on purpose, and the group will lower its guard. Machiavelli didn't just read people, he repositioned them. He created reputations like a sculptor creates statues, slowly, subtly, piece by piece. And once he molded public opinion, his enemies didn't even realize they were walking into a narrative he had already written. That's the brilliance of manipulating predictability. While others obsess over being seen as powerful, you remain unreadable. They perform their strength. You observe their weakness, and when the moment comes, your silence is louder than their speeches. In a room full of people reacting to each other's assumed roles, the one who created those roles becomes invisible and untouchable. This is not cruelty, this is strategy. Let others build their confidence on false maps. Let them think they know the terrain. Meanwhile, you redraw the landscape, one whisper here, one subtle gesture there. You don't need to attack anyone whose image is already collapsing under its own weight. Just step back and let the illusion do the work. Machiavelli knew that control wasn't about brute force or charm. It was about perception. And the one who shapes perception shapes destiny. So while they all try to read each other like open books, you become the author, writing characters, crafting expectations, and making sure that when the final act comes, everyone ends up exactly where you foresaw. Not all people are complex. Most are predictable, painfully so. Machiavelli studied human behavior not because it was chaotic, but because it was patterned. And the more he watched, the more he realized that people fall into types, archetypes, fixed emotional blueprints that guide their reactions, their choices, their betrayals. Once you identify which type someone is, you no longer have to guess how they'll respond under pressure. You'll already know. The first is the reactor. They are emotional, impulsive, loud when hurt, louder when ignored. They can't sit with uncertainty. When they feel disrespected, they lash out immediately. Their need to be seen, to be heard, exposes their next move before they even realize they're making it. Watch how quickly they respond to silence. That's your warning. The second is the avoider. They hate confrontation. They smile when they should speak. They agree just to escape discomfort. You'll think they're loyal, until one day they vanish. Not because they hate you, but because avoiding pain is more important than protecting truth. Their betrayal isn't loud. It's quiet, soft, and always arrives too late for you to prepare. But you can still predict it. Just watch how they deflect when cornered. Listen to the way they say, "It's fine," when it's not. That's how they warn you without knowing it. The third is the mirror. This one is dangerous. They imitate. They reflect back what you want to see. They agree with your opinions, echo your moods, shapeshift into something safe. But it's a performance. Because the moment your power weakens, they turn. Their identity was never real. They borrowed yours. And when they no longer need you, they discard the mask like it was never part of them. Predicting a mirror is simple. Watch how often they switch sides. Watch how their voice changes depending on who is in the room. Consistency doesn't exist for them. Adaptation does. Machiavelli didn't waste time trying to change people. He just identified them. Once he understood which archetype someone followed, he placed them in the correct position on the board. Not out of hatred, but strategy. He didn't expect the reactor to be discreet, or the avoider to be loyal under fire. He didn't get blindsided by the mirror's betrayal. He saw the pattern, and once you see the pattern, your emotions disappear. You stop taking things personally. You stop begging people to be better. You accept who they are and predict what they will do. That's power. Because while they remain trapped in their roles, repeating, reacting, running, you are standing above the game, watching each piece play itself out exactly as expected, not with bitterness, not with arrogance, but with clarity. And clarity is the beginning of control. The cruelest illusion is choice. Give someone two paths, and they'll swear they had control, never realizing both roads were designed by you. Machiavelli mastered this technique, not by force, not by manipulation in the way people think, but by understanding patterns so well that he could predict which path a person would take long before they believed they were making a decision. And with that knowledge, he didn't need to block them. He simply offered options that led exactly where he wanted them to end up. This is how you trap without chains, not through threats or commands, but through invisible design. You let them feel free, while quietly removing the exits. You study their fears, their habits, their ego wounds, and you build choices around them like mirrors in a maze. If they are proud, you give them an opportunity to prove themselves, knowing they'll walk straight into a trap of overexposure. If they crave safety, you let them retreat right into isolation, where they become easy to pressure. If they want recognition, you hand them a stage that slowly collapses beneath them. The key is to never appear as the architect. Let them believe it was their decision, that they followed their own compass. They'll defend their actions even as the walls close in, because nothing blinds a person like the belief that they chose their own outcome. Machiavelli didn't just predict behavior, he built scenarios that made prediction irrelevant. By the time someone acted, the structure was already locked. The illusion of freedom was enough to keep them moving in the direction he had chosen from the beginning. And that's the brilliance of this strategy. You don't have to control people directly. You just have to know what they will naturally do when faced with pressure, temptation, or fear. Once you know that, you offer them exactly the decisions that feed their instincts, and they walk right into their own manipulation, smiling, confident, grateful, even. Power becomes effortless when others carry out your plan thinking it was their idea. You appear generous, supportive, patient. But every gesture, every silence, every opportunity you create is a calculated step toward the outcome you've already mapped. This is not deception. This is psychological architecture. While others argue, you offer choices. While others force, you redirect. While others try to dominate, you guide. And in the end, when the dust settles, and they look back confused at how they arrived, exactly where you wanted, they will find no villain, only themselves. That is the art of silent control. And once you master it, you'll never need to raise your voice or show your hand again. While you're busy studying everyone else, make sure no one can study you. That was one of Machiavelli's most dangerous lessons. If prediction is power, then being unreadable is armor. Most people walk through life broadcasting their patterns without realizing it. They react the same way to pressure, to praise, to silence. They think they're being authentic, but what they're actually doing is making themselves predictable. And predictable people are easy to control. That's why Machiavelli didn't just observe others, he erased his own trail. He became the pattern no one could crack. To do this, you must first abandon your need to be understood. Most people want to be seen, to be validated, to be transparent. But every time you reveal how you feel, what you expect, or what triggers you, you hand someone a piece of your programming. A smart enemy will collect those pieces. A smarter one will weaponize them. So change the rhythm. Speak when they expect silence. Be calm when they expect anger. Walk away when they expect revenge. This doesn't mean becoming cold. It means becoming uncatchable. Confuse their predictions. Break your own pattern. Do not become a slave to identity. Do not cling to a single way of thinking, reacting, or feeling. Be adaptable. Be shapeless. Be the person who cannot be placed into a box, who cannot be anticipated, who cannot be labeled. That is how you remove yourself from everyone's map. They may study your past, but it won't help them, because you are no longer repeating it. Every time someone thinks they have you figured out, you quietly change direction. Not out of panic, but design. You are no longer participating in the game of emotional habits. You are redesigning the board entirely. Machiavelli understood that in a world where everyone is trying to read each other, the greatest power belongs to the one who reveals nothing. You do not over-explain. You do not defend yourself. You do not telegraph your plans through predictable emotion. You move quietly, adjusting, shifting, recalibrating, and while they struggle to understand what you'll do next, you already know what they will do because they're still trapped in their old script. Let others live on repeat. You will not. Your unpredictability will protect you. Your stillness will confuse them. Your refusal to react will make them doubt their own strategies. And in the end, while they waste energy trying to predict you, You'll be the one writing the ending, unreadable, unshaken, unmatched. Knowing what someone will do is not enough. Power comes from knowing when they'll do it. Timing is the invisible blade. It cuts deeper than force, cleaner than emotion, and faster than words. Machiavelli understood that the most effective strike is not the loudest. It's the one they never saw coming. To predict someone's actions is a form of control, but to act at the exact moment when their pattern repeats, when their guard is down, when their outcome feels inevitable, that is mastery. People cycle through emotions like seasons: anger, confidence, doubt, fear. They rotate through them like clockwork, and most of the time they are unaware. But the strategist is always watching, waiting, because the moment of weakness always arrives. It may take weeks, sometimes months, but if you're patient, it will come. The reactor will overstep, the avoider will vanish, the mirror will slip, and when they do, you don't respond emotionally. You don't confront them. You don't argue. You move. Fast, clean, decisive. You let the pattern repeat just enough times for it to feel permanent. Then, at the precise moment they fall into it again, you strike not out of rage, but calculation. Not to punish them, but to close the loop forever. Timing is what separates power from recklessness. The fool exposes too soon. The emotional player reacts the moment they are provoked. But the strategist, he waits for the perfect opening, the moment when his move will not just land, it will echo. Timing amplifies impact. A whispered truth at the right moment can break alliances. A silence held long enough can shatter confidence. A gesture delayed can create paranoia. Machiavelli didn't just predict what others would do. He shaped their behavior through anticipation, then moved when the illusion of safety was at its peak. Because that's when people are blind. When they believe they're winning, when they think they've escaped, that's when the pattern returns. And that's when the blade falls. You must learn to sit with restraint. Not every opportunity is the right one. Not every reaction deserves a response. Most of your power will come from what you choose not to do until the moment is perfect. Then, and only then, you act. Not to prove yourself, not to be seen, but to end something permanently. Let others rush. Let them act out of panic or ego. You will wait. You will observe. And when the hour turns, when their loop restarts, you will already be in position. That is when your move will not just surprise them, it will define them. Not because you were louder, but because you were perfectly timed. He never had to raise his voice. Never had to make threats or chase power. Because by the time everyone else noticed the shift, it was already over. That was Machiavelli's final brilliance. Not domination by force, but control through foresight. The real masters don't fight in the open. They shape the board in silence. They watch the players move, not with panic, but with patience. And by the time those players realize the game has changed, it's because the quiet one already wrote the ending. You don't need to be the loudest to win. You don't need to react to every insult, explain every decision, or prove your strength. You only need one thing: clarity. Once you can see someone's patterns, trace their wounds, anticipate their fears, and reverse engineer their choices, you have already taken their power without touching them. That is the Machiavellian way. People think influence comes from charisma, from speeches, from dominance. It doesn't. It comes from prediction, from knowing not just what someone will do, but why they will do it. From watching long enough that their chaos becomes a rhythm, and their surprises become statistics. The powerful don't rush. They do not play every card. They do not move with every shift in energy. They sit back and let everyone else run in circles, reacting to each other, revealing their patterns, shouting their wounds into the air. Meanwhile, the strategist remains still, collecting, memorizing, waiting. And when the moment finally comes to act, he does so quietly, cleanly, without emotion, because the outcome was never in question. It was calculated. From the first observation to the final move, it was all foreseen. That's why the most dangerous person in the room is not the one with the sword. It's the one who already saw the battle 5 steps ago and made sure the floor would collapse when you stepped forward. No one sees them coming, and by the time they do, they're already losing. If you want to live like that untouchable, unshaken, always 3 moves ahead, you must leave behind the need to be seen. Embrace the shadows. Watch more than you speak. Let others believe they have the power, while you guide the current beneath their feet. Every pattern, every outburst, every silence is data. Store it. Use it. Shape your world without needing to control it. Because once you master the ability to predict, you no longer need to dominate. You simply remove the element of surprise from everyone around you. And when no one can surprise you, no one can stop you. That is the final level of power. The invisible throne, the crown no one sees. The empire built not through noise, but through knowledge. And the strategist, the one who saw it all coming, never has to raise his voice. He already won. If this made you see people differently, if it made you realize how much control you can gain just by watching, then you're already becoming dangerous in silence. Subscribe for more strategies like this. The world won't teach you power, but we will.